to know the artist behind the epic melodies, songs, and beats. Celebrating the best new music from around the world. This is the A State of Trance podcast.
Hey, what's up? My name is Ruben Ronde, and this is another A State of Trance podcast. And today we are joined by someone that just released a brand new album called 30. I always have to say it this way. Mark Scherre. Whenever we see each other at events, it's just like that. Because I think it's Scottish is one of the coolest languages on this planet. And it's just so nice to say, Mark Scherre.
You still can't understand me though, can you?
No. We had so many discussions that I walk away. I'm like, I spoke with this man for half an hour. I didn't understand the things. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm going to talk slowly for you today so you can understand me.
Thank you so much for being here. First of all, congratulations on the release of your album, 30.
Thank you.
Blood, Sweat and Tears.
Yes.
Lots of, how do you say it? Time in the studio, just pondering away and just thinking about a lot of stuff, I guess. We'll get to that in just a bit, the album, because last year you celebrated 30 years in the industry. So that means you've seen it all, but we're going to start with the very first beginning. Let's go back 30 years. Now even more probably, because that's when you started. And I would love to know the steps before it. How did you fall in love with dance music? How did it hit you? So
for me, the gateway band that I heard that just made my brain go was the KLF. Remember the KLF?
Yeah.
So the KLF, exactly. Yeah, What Time Is Love, 3am Eternal, all that stuff. They were just, for me, that was just like, wow, who are these guys? And then closely followed by The Prodigy, Carl Cox, obviously we spoke earlier about Malak Ali, Ultrasonic. There's another band called Dream Frequency from England. And just, I was lucky there was a massive rave scene in my hometown. Yeah. I'm from a really small seaside town called Prestwick, and it's joined on to another seaside town called Ayr, which is 5 minutes away from.
Was it like
house.
A touristy town where people?
People used to come. Not so much now, unfortunately. Ayr's not the town it used to be, but people used to come for their holidays. In Scotland or England, they'd come to Ayr Beach because it was like ice creams. Weather was better back then. Nice big long sandy beach, lots of shops and stuff to do. But there was a club called Hangar 13. And it was in the beach pavilion. So it's like an old school pavilion with the four turrets, the kind of classic UK beach pavilion. And this place every week was just insane. It was like sweat dripping off the ceilings, all the best bands, all the best DJs. It was like one of the only clubs in Scotland that were actually bringing a lot of the Dutch guys over, and foreign DJs like Die Witness would come over, Hard Floor from Germany, Ramirez from Italy, all the Scottish bands, Q-Tex, Ultrasonic. So that was on my doorstep, and that was my very first gig. Came in 1994.
Yeah. So first, as a teenager, you went to this club, and you were like, okay. So that's the moment that I'm always curious. That what was the moment that you went from clubber to being an aspiring DJ?
So I think 1992 there was another smaller club called the Bobby Jones, and the resident DJ was a guy called Trevor Ellie, who's a very good friend of mine. And Trevor went from the Bobbies, actually get headhunted pretty much from the Bobbies to this new club, Hangar 13, and we all kind of followed him to the Hangar. And I used to give him mixtapes, like
mixing at home.
I was relentless.
Yeah.
I kind of cringe when I think about it, but every week I was giving him mixtapes. Trevor, listen to this, listen to this. I was driving up to Glasgow on a Saturday afternoon, buying all my vinyl, coming down, doing a mix, taking it to the club on Saturday night, and then giving him these bloody mixtapes every week. And eventually it got to the point there was an opportunity come up, like I think maybe a DJ had cancelled, or there was maybe more time in the schedule. And he says, right, Mark, I'm going to give you a spot next Saturday. Game on, get your records together. And I was just like, wow, So that was 1994. That was my very first performance in a club.
Before that, how long did it take you to become skilled enough to DJ?
You
still remember buying your first decks, for example?
Yeah. I actually saved up. At the time, I couldn't afford to buy 1210s, but my mum and dad became, do you know the word guarantor? So they became the guarantor for the credit for the deck. So basically,
they had the loan. Yeah.
So they took out a loan in their name, and they basically said, right, you need to get a job and pay us up every month. So long story short, I think it was like £960, which was a lot of money. I was like 17, 18 years old, but they kindly were the guarantors for the credit. I paid it up over 2 or 3 years, and I had my first set at 1210s, and I was just on the decks every day, practicing. But I mean, I think the first set of decks I maybe bought in 1992, and they were like the belt drives ones. You know,
that's how I started as well. Horrible.
Yeah.
Because they were not constant at all.
You pushed the record.
And you thought you had the right speed, and then you started mixing in, and suddenly the speed was totally something
like
different.
A horrible little wheel, like a little
oh
wheel.
My Lord!
It's the stuff you get like anxiety dreams of.
Oh yes. Especially when I remember the first shows that I did. For example, I had to bring these decks with me, the belt drives.
Yeah.
So you were standing in a club with your own gear, and it's horrible, and still you had to do it somehow.
And then you realize somebody comes on the stage to talk to you, and the needle bounces across.
Ting, 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 ting. Oh no, terrible.
Yeah.
So you practiced for quite a while, and then you were skilled enough, and then you were handing out the tapes. And then it got you your first show. So you were determined. You were like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, I knew that from a very young age. You know, as soon as I heard, I think it was like one of the kind of defining moments I can remember is I was down the beach with my friends. It was a hot summer's night, and the Prodigy were live in Norwich, and it was live on Radio 1. And I recorded it, and I had this tape cassette with this live set from the Prodigy, and the tape was just on rotation the whole time in the car. We're just like down the beach having a great time with my friends, listening to this over and over again. And I was like, this is what I want to do, you know. And fortunately, the guy that I was talking about there, Trevor Riley, he just actually bought a studio premises in Glasgow, and he found out that I could play the keyboard. He wasn't quite as confident on the keyboard, but I'd done piano lessons and keyboard lessons when I was younger. So he had the knowledge to set up the studio equipment, and he just learned the basics of Cubase. So he's like, Mark, I've got a studio in Glasgow, why don't you come up and we'll have a jamming session together?
That's when you were already DJing shows.
Yeah, so this was like about 93, 94. Round about the same time when I got the first gig in Hangar 13. And we made we used to make Happy Hardcore together, and we actually started a Happy Hardcore band called the Casio Brothers. Yeah. And we had a few releases on the Dutch label Dwarf. Remember Dwarf Records?
Yeah.
The kind of Gabber label.
Yeah.
So we had a few releases with them as well. So it was just an amazing time.
Yeah, this was because that's when 1995 is the first time that I saw releases popping up.
Yeah.
Which is quite fast, because when you were DJing for the first time in 1994, normally what you saw back in the days especially is that DJs were more DJs, and then there was a couple of them starting to release some music as well, which was not that common, because it was really just fucking hard to make music back then.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it required a lot of patience, a lot of money, because you had to buy equipment.
Exactly.
You had to sampler, synthesizer, and stuff like that.
And all the cables as well. They had to have a big mixer, big mixing desk, all the cables, all the synths.
You had 8 tracks or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if you had a 16-channel desk, it was like, whoa, that's the future. You know, it's crazy stuff.
The future. The future for the next few years.
Yeah, exactly.
So 1985, but that's when I did my research for this little talk.
Okay.
I saw it popping up indeed, the Happy Hardcore collaboration between Trevor Riley, Party Time, and
Last Anthem. The first white label released was the Last Anthem, and that was, so Trevor actually played that in the Hangar 13 before it closed, and he played that as the last track. And I was still a clubber, so I was on the dance floor with all my friends, and he played the track that we'd written together. And it was the first time that I'd heard a track that I'd been involved with being played in a club in a live scenario with like 1,000 people in there, or 900 people. And it was just like, wow, you know, and the feeling, I can still remember the feeling. I still get goosebumps when I think about it. It was just such an addictive feeling when I thought, this is what I want to do. And I just knew that I had to work my ass off to make it happen.
Yeah. But it was Happy Hardcore back then.
It was Happy Hardcore.
Because
but I mean, I was being influenced by a lot of other stuff. The great thing about this club was Trevor was playing like, you know, fast and hard acid. There was breakbeat. There was rave, like, you know, kind of piano stuff, big hoovers. It was like, it was kind of like the way, we can obviously talk about this later, but we're talking earlier about how everything's gone full circle just now. Like, it's a very kind of multi-genre thing that's happening now within the trance scene.
100%, yeah.
So that's what it was like in the 90s, the early 90s. Like, it was under one roof. You had house music, you had piano house, you had acid, you had hardcore, gabber, rave, piano, everything, you know, and everybody was there enjoying it, going crazy. There was no like, oh no, he started playing trance or you started playing acid. He just went with it, you know, and everybody was so open-minded, and it's one of the things that's kind of annoyed me over the last, maybe not so much now, but over the last, you know, 10, 20 years, is the fact that dance music became so categorised and pigeonholed, because it wasn't like that back in the day, you know. It was just like, it was one love, one roof.
Because also when you see old sets also from Tiesto or Ferry. Also from these times, it was all like happy hardcore, and it would go into some sort of techno and then back into some psytrance or whatever.
Yeah.
Everything was possible,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Let's go over some, because I wrote down a couple of years and a couple of tracks or releases or whatever linked up to it. And I'm just curious about certain things because, of course, in the year 2000, something big happened because you started Public Domain with some friends. Tell us about it. Why did you start a new alias for all of this?
So basically, I became, after Hangar 13, I kind of built up a name for myself locally and started getting other gigs in Scotland and stuff. And I became resident in a nightclub called it's called the Metro, but it's the Metropolis in Saltcoats, which is another seaside town about 15 minutes away from where I live. And I was a resident in there, and I'd seen the film Blade.
Yeah.
And I thought, I know that track. I've got that in vinyl somewhere. So I literally went home the next day, went up into my loft, found the track. It was the Pump Panel remix of New Order Confusion. And I thought, I'm gonna actually drop this in the club next week. And it was primarily a trance club in the Metro. So to play something as hard as that with a big distorted kick drum, it's a bit of a risk.
Yeah.
But I also had an a cappella of the Public Enemy album, where they say "Bass for your face, London." Everybody in the house tonight make some noise. Yeah. So I started playing the Flavor Flav's voice on the vinyl, and then I just dropped in the Pump Panel thing. And by that point, a lot of people had seen the film Blade. So as soon as that kicked in, the whole club just erupted, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I wasn't expecting that reaction. And then I think it was maybe like 2 or 3 weeks after that of me playing it in the club, just doing this little kind of live mashup thing. I was out in air.
So were you queuing it up because it was vinyls back then? You were queuing
so
it up,
vinyl, just scratching over the top. No, bass for your face, bass
Yeah,
for your
yeah.
Just doing this live thing. It wasn't a produced track. It was just a live mashup. And then I was out in the pub a few weeks after, and I got talking to these two guys. They come up to me and said, "Oh, Mark, you don't know us, but we're big fans of what you've done in the past with Trevor Riley, the Casio brothers.
Yeah.
We've just completed an HND in audio engineering. We've got some studio equipment. Do you want to come in and we'll try and get a jamming session organised?" Because they were from the same town as well. I was like, yeah, why not? So the first session we had, I said, guys, I've actually got an idea for a track because I've been doing this live mashup in the Metro. I've seen it going off every week, and I think we could do something with it. So that was the first track we did. It was Operation Blade.
That's amazing. So you brought in the idea of the mashup and then you put it into the computer actually.
Because I was still, even in 1999, I wouldn't have called myself a confident producer. I could get some beats together and I could finish a track, but it was nothing that was worth talking about.
Yeah.
But because the guys had done their HND in audio engineering, they had a bit more technical ability and they knew how to use compressors properly and get fatter sound out the synths and stuff. So just combine all the ideas of me being more of a DJ in the live scenario, knowing the basics, and having these guys come in. We were kind of enhancing each other's ideas and making our own sounds bigger and better. Yeah. So Operation Blade was the first track we did, and so we released it as a white label with Flavor Flav's voice. It was obviously completely illegal, but it's a white label. We pressed it up. Judge Jules picked up on it, and he started playing it in Radio 1, and he played it for like 14 weeks in a row, and it became his tried and tested cut. Do you remember he used to do tried and tested? So 14 weeks, and by this point, there was actually a bidding war started between a lot of major labels. So Extravaganza, I think, like Manifesto, Sony, there was like 5 or 6 labels were like, we want to sign this. So anyway, long story short, we obviously couldn't release the track the way it was because the samples were illegal. So, we spoke about Malak earlier. So Malak Ali, he was a very good friend of mine, sadly passed away last year. But he had made a name for himself with a band in Scotland called Ultrasonic. And he just did such a massive stage presence. Like as soon as he walked on the stage, without even opening his mouth, he was like Keith from The Prodigy, he just had that stance and the craziness and he just didn't know what he was going to do. So he was my first choice. And I knew him. He wasn't a friend at that point. I knew him well enough to talk to him, but I wouldn't say he was like a close friend at that point. But I knew him well enough to ask him. I said, Malaka, could you do us a favour? Would you like to re-record these vocals? We've got a track in the go just now. We need to get it re-sung because we potentially could end up like having a chart hit with this. And he was
because the labels were already having a bidding war.
So but because of he'd toured the world with Ultrasonic, he was getting a little bit tired of touring and stuff, and he didn't say yes right away. But his wife Maria thankfully said, Mallorca, come on, Mark's a friend, just, you know, do it for Mark. And thankfully he did. He recorded it. We re-recorded the vocals, and yeah, it got signed to Extravaganza and just became this massive big hit out of nowhere.
I still remember buying it.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
You probably did a fair share of vinyls back in the days.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, like tens of thousands. It was absolutely crazy, just the way it blew up. But you know, it was written for the dance floor. It wasn't written to be a chart hit, and that was the magic of it. I think if you try and go into the studio and write a hit, it's just not going to happen. But the way it all happened, just organically, just going from there, just right up, you know, it was amazing.
And it started all as a mashup thing.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
And that's how I became like such a good friend with Mallorca, because we basically toured the world together for years, and he just became like a brother.
Yeah.
You know, it was a big loss last year.
It's memories that are never taken away. So you still have to have those, luckily.
Yeah, I'm so happy that I have those memories, because there was two sides to Mallorca. There was the mad, crazy guy on stage, but there was also this kind of loving, you know, fun-loving family guy that was off stage.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, I'm just really happy that I got to know both
Otherwise,
sides.
it was also impossible to tour with someone like that, because if it's only crazy, then
it's going to end in tears. Yeah. But don't get me wrong, we had some crazy parties.
Oh yeah. Probably some things that we're not able to talk about here right now.
It's madness.
So let's talk about those parties. No.
Cut.
No one's listening anyway. It's fine. So more public domain. You did a lot more releases. 2001, Let Me Clear My Throat, Rock the Funky Beats. There was always like a link to some hip hop samples here as well.
Yeah.
Who came up with those? Because you probably shared this story like a million times, right? But because I'm curious about it, because you always try to get some hook in there that people already knew, or what was the story?
I think, to be honest, I think Mallorca kind of brought the hip hop vibes to the thing, because he was crazy about Public Enemy, even though we were the ones that sampled Public Enemy originally.
Yeah.
He was the kind of hip hop guy. So yeah, I mean, it's a kind of sound that we just rolled with. There wasn't really anybody else doing that kind of live vocal mash up with hard dance at the time. Obviously the Watt Brothers released Fat Bass at a similar time, and there was that kind of hard acid thing going on.
Yeah.
But you know, there wasn't really anybody else doing that kind of thing. So it just became our kind of sound, and because nobody else was doing it, we just rolled with it, and it was working, and the record labels were happy, and at all the shows we're doing around the world, that's people were loving what we're doing, you know. So it just became our kind of sound.
And in the meantime, 2004, you also did more public domain, Make the Connection, Dangerous Mind, I Love You More.
Yeah.
Then there was nothing for a while, and then 2010 you had Automatic Overload. 2013, so another 3-year skip.
Yeah.
Ultraviolet, As a Gateway, and then 2023 you came back again with I Am Here, and We Got the Power.
So I basically left the band in 2009. So I was in from 2000 to 2009. So anything that comes after 2009, that was James Allen and Neil Skinner. So they were. James was one of the original producers that I was talking about. So me, James, and Alistair McIsaac were the 3 original members of Public Domain. Then when Mallorca joined, it was like a 4-piece. Then when we signed an album deal with Extravaganza, David Forbes came in as a kind of 5th member, because he'd written some tracks with Mallorca that were in the same kind of vein as Public Domain. And Alex Gold at Extravaganza basically gave us only a few months to come up with this album.
Yeah.
So me, James, and Alistair had written 6 tracks for the album, and Mallorca and Davey wrote 4 tracks for the album, so we made a 10-track album.
Yeah.
So Davey was like the 5th member of the Beatles kind of thing, you know. He was there but in the kind of background working with Mallorca. So that was how they all get involved. In 2009 though, I just felt the band I felt as if I couldn't really do anything else with it. And at that point my solo career was doing well, you know. We spoke about Trance Energy earlier off camera as well. So I was getting all these really amazing shows, and I thought, I don't have time to put all my efforts into Public Domain anymore. I want to, maybe a little bit selfishly, I want to focus on myself.
Yeah. So the last ones I mentioned are all without you.
They're by James, either on his own or with Neil. Yeah. So, but just to confuse you further, there was actually a Dutch group called Public Domain as well.
Okay.
They did kind of gabber stuff. So people get mixed up with those guys as well, because some people come up to me, oh yeah, I saw you in such and such in Holland. I'm like, that wasn't me. that was the other Public Domain. But we were, you know what it was like, there wasn't really much internet and back then, so we had no idea there was a Dutch band called Public Domain as well. Yeah. So it was just like one of these things.
So let me jump back a little, because you already mentioned Alex Gold as well. I think let's say the new generation of producers, of DJs, never heard of him maybe, but he was such an essential part of the upbringing of dance music as well, especially in England with Extravaganza.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about those times that you were approached and you started to work over there, and tell us something that you haven't shared with a lot of people before.
Well,
because it must be crazy times.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it was absolutely crazy. Like, when we went, one of the first times we played in Ibiza was at Privilege in Ibiza for Alex Gold's Extravaganza night, and we were on stage with Agnelli and Nelson and Chicane, I think it was.
Yeah, because those were the big names on the label.
Yeah. So one night we played in Privilege. We finished on stage at 4 a.m. We went straight to the airport. We flew to Russia and played in a World War II fortress in the middle of the Russian Sea in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
Then we finished that and we came back to Ibiza to record the video for Let Me Clear My Throat and Too Many MCs. And then from there we went to Dance Valley and we played at Dance Valley. And this was all in the same weekend. It was nuts.
Wow.
So, and the tour, the kind of promoter guy at Dance Valley was running around the place trying to find, where's public domain, where's public domain. We'd all passed out in the catering. Every one of us was
just too tired,
asleep on like the picnic benches in Dance Valley. Like, it's just we're completely zonked. We just didn't have any energy. So I mean, that was just one weekend that sticks in my head because we were so tired. But there was tours of Australia and just going around the world. Not much sleep. Probably drinking too much. It was a blur because things were, for the band, it was absolutely insane because we were signed to Sony in Australia as well. So they had all these kind of tours going on in Australia. The first tour we ever did in Australia was a month long. We did like 8 or 9 shows in a month, and we were over there did all the main cities: Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Gold Coast, Sydney. So it was absolutely bonkers. I know we were nowhere near as busy as guys like Avicii, but I got a taste of burning out.
Yeah.
Because if we'd managed to sustain that for like 10 years, I don't know what kind of state we'd have been in, because it was too much for us.
How did you handle that?
I don't think we did handle it, to be honest. It's just, the band just kind of faded out after a while. But when at our peak, we were just absolutely trashed. It was so difficult. I remember actually doing a sound check in Home nightclub in Sydney. I think it was Sydney. Yeah, Sydney. And I was shaking. I was so just absolutely like no energy. And I thought, I'm going to collapse here. And I can remember just kind of lying back on one of the couches in the club.
Yeah.
In between setting up the keyboards and doing sound checks and stuff. And I thought, this is not good for us. So yeah, it was some of the best times of my life, but also some of the worst times of my life, because you mentioned Alex Gold, but I don't want to say too much, but things ended very, very badly with Alex, to the point where our back catalogue is now owned by another company, and we don't really have much access to it, and it's very, very frustrating because Operation Blade is about to celebrate its 25th anniversary this year, and we can't actually do much with it because we signed a really bad contract, and that's all I can really say about it.
I think a lot of artists were in that position because you were most of you were like young kids, coming out of the rave scene, and suddenly you're touring the world, and people just take advantage of you, I guess.
We got offered in advance, and it was like a lot of money. That still is a lot of money now, and it was a lot of money for 3 guys from Ayrshire at the time. And my excuse for it is, first of all, we should have got a music lawyer to check everything, but we didn't. And
where's Judge Shields when you needed him?
I know, exactly. But my main reason for trying to push, technically it was me that kind of pushed the guys into signing, but my reason for this is because the Watt Brothers had come up with the Fat Bass track at the same time.
To get it out.
And there was a war going on. I mean, we got to number 5. I think they got to number 9. The record labels had said to us, if the Watt Brothers hadn't released the Fat Bass track, you guys could have gone top 3. You could have even gone
because
to
people were
1.
mistaking.
Because they were getting them mixed up. Yeah. But it's like, I released a track in 2004 called Live and Learn, and it was named after that because I made every mistake I could have made in those times. I made it in a very short space of time, and I lived and learned it, very quickly. So that was 2004 was quite an important year for me because that was when I decided to really focus on my solo career and just focus on myself and not make any.
But you're saying that it was all mistakes, but maybe without those mistakes, though, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I know. But it's like you never know. It's like hindsight's an amazing thing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes not. That's amazing stories, though. Yeah. Because it's the period of time that I was a raver back then, so I had no idea what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So it must have been such a special time. I was with talking with Ron from Signum also when we were in Poland together as well. Yeah. And he had so many stories like that as well, because he's been in such situations as well. Suddenly you're touring the world out of nowhere, and also that it's going down again. That must be hard sometimes as well to to work with. So, okay, you already mentioned it. 2004, the first Mark's Sherry release, After Dark on Red Monkey.
So After Dark was like, it was definitely like one of my first official releases. I'd released a white label of a track. Do you remember DJ Elite? That fucked camera. The camera's ready, prepare the flash. Really kind of hard techno thing that used to get absolutely hammered in Glasgow and Scotland back in the day.
Reworked by Green Velvet also later.
So I did a rework of Green Velvet, the DJ Elite one. So that I released that in white label and it did really well. And I thought, I think
I'm onto something.
Yeah, exactly. It was a big confidence booster. So the next track I wrote was After Dark, and I sent it to Malaka and Davey because they obviously had their own label, Red Monkey, that had been going like a year or two at that point. And Malaka came straight back. He said, "We absolutely love it. We're going to release it for you." So that was amazing. And the Signal Runners did the remix for the B-side, and that was Andrew Bayer.
Andrew Bayer, Alan Nimmo.
Signal Runners with Alan Nimmo. Yeah. So they did the remix for us, and it just became a really good release. And I was really still really proud of it.
So you managed to step over the, how do you say it, the imposter syndrome that you had in 2000, and then suddenly you thought it was they like it enough. It's funny that you did the Signal Runners.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Andrew Bayer.
That was actually, I think that was Andrew's first.
That's
release.
probably the first one.
Yeah. So there you go.
And now he's just insane.
He's
the music that he creates is just mind blowing.
One of the best producers out there.
Yeah. 2005, the first mention of Outburst.
Yep.
With Vengeance on Detox. Detox was also your home for quite a long time.
Yeah, and on the B-side of Vengeance was the Live and Learn track, so that kind of ties in with that. Yeah, Detox. So the guy Freddie at Detox, became really good friends with him. I had a really good working relationship with him. He signed Vengeance, signed Live and Learn. Mm-hmm. They came back to me with more ideas, and the other Dutch guy, Mars, that was working on the label, he was Michiel. I need to get my S in. Michiel. Yep. So he was. He's an amazing producer as well, and I just got a really good buzz, and the releases were doing really well. Marco V was like one of the first big guys to play my stuff, and I was just like, wow, Marco likes me, what, Marco. Yeah, exactly. So that was another big confidence booster. And then after that, I did a remix of Joey V, Chopper Chunk. I did more tracks with James Allen, Red Alert, and I remixed Dazzle. There's a Dutch guy, Dazzle. Remember DJ Dazzle backwards as well. So it was great. I had a really good run of releases with those guys. Yeah, it's a good time.
And now a track 2007 that I wanted to mention, because I remember when I started working with Armin on A State of Trance. This was beginning 2007. Yeah. 2007, yeah. I remember going to his studio, which was a very small studio where he made the radio every single week. And he was working on the episode of A State of Trance with Walk Away that you did with Terry Fermanagh. Yeah. So sitting in that studio, I always remember when he played that song, because that was the first song that he played to me. He was like, I'm working on the A State of Trance right now. So this track, it's Terry Fermanagh, March Here, Walk Away. So that was the first one that I heard when I was in the studio. So for me, that's always, when it came up yesterday, I was like, hey, that's a special tune to me as well.
That's amazing to hear that. Yeah, great.
Do you still remember making that one? Because that was more like into the next era. Like this was more like this first trancey kind of. Yeah.
I mean, it was still quite like
still bumping,
beefy kick drum. Nice and techy percussion. Like I've always with my the older kind of tech trance, I tried to move my beats off the grid by a 16th. Getting a bit technical now, but it just created this kind of galloping kind of groove. Sander Van Doorn used to do it as well. So I thought this is really working as a really kind of chunky track, but it was a bit darker, a bit more, maybe even a bit more techie than my normal stuff. But I'd met Mark Sinclair, who's the vocalist, Terry Fermanagh, and he's just got an amazing voice. And Mark, if you're listening, it's so frustrating. He hates his own voice. He hates his voice.
How?
I don't know. Maybe it's a Scottish thing. And I've tried so many times to get him to sing again, and he's just not, doesn't like his own voice. Mark, sort it out.
Mark, we're almost 20 years later. It's time.
No.
It's time.
His nickname's Sinky. Come on, Sinky, you can do this.
Come on, Sinky. Come on, let's do it.
Yeah, so that did really well, that release for me. And obviously signing it to you guys was a big deal for me as well. It was like, well, things are going really well, Yeah. It's all stepping stones back then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. A little sidestep, because in 2007 you also started Outburst Radio.
Yeah.
Now the obvious question, what happened with Outburst Radio?
It's just on hold just now.
The last episode was 627, if I'm correct, in 2023.
Don't remind me. The amount of people that keep on saying to me, come on, get the show going again. Yeah. I've not had the time. I've just I moved house last year. Just a lot of things going on in my life, and I just, touring's been really busy. The production's been busy. I do a lot of mastering for people. I just feel you've only got so much energy to give sometimes, and if it starts to tip over and just makes you feel too tired or too exhausted, something has to give. And I just felt like even a weekly show or a bi-weekly show or a monthly show, I was like...
It takes a lot of work.
Yeah. And it was just... Something had to give in my life, and at the moment it's unfortunate. It's the radio show. I don't even know if I'll start it again. I don't know. It's kind of hanging in mid-air just now. I don't know. Maybe I'll get the urge again.
I understand that you would prefer to make music over making a radio show.
As you know, it's a big commitment, and I've got so much respect for you and Armin for doing this every week, because
it's not just the two of us; it's a whole damn team.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be possible to do it.
Yeah. So you know yourself, it's a big thing. But it might come back one day. I do get asked at least 2 or 3 times.
I have the same, because I used to have a radio show called The Sound of Holland, and even last week at the State of Trance, people were coming up like, "Hey, are you going to do that radio show?" I'm like, I didn't do it for 5 years. Still bringing it up.
Yeah. I mean, the kind of thought of it actually gives me the fear, because it's just, I know how much preparation goes into it. I used to spend so much time working out the mixes and mixing and key, and it's a lot of work. And I would rather now I think because I'm getting older as well. I'm 49 just now. I'm 50 actually next week.
Oh,
So I've only got so much energy to give in my life, and I kind of like the quiet life sometimes.
Yeah, I understand, 100%. And there was another story that you just told during lunch as well, about another track that you signed. Was it 2008 with Dick de Groot?
Yeah, so I started
Tell us about
it.
Yeah,
so I watched the film Sunshine, and this track came on in Sunshine. I was like, this is who wrote this? And it's actually a composer called John Murphy, I think his name was. Mm-hmm. So basically I did a full cover version of it, because the film, I don't know if you've seen the film Sunshine, it's directed by Danny Boyle that did Trainspotting, and it's got Cillian Murphy in it, that's in Peaky Blinders. So it's one of these films, it's an amazing film, but not that many people have seen it. Only maybe like 30% of the people that I ask have actually seen it, and it kind of shocks me, because it's such an amazing film. Go and watch it. Anyway, Star Within a Star, it's a remake of the theme track to that film. I sent it to Dick de Groot at High Contrast, because I loved what he was doing, all the Marcel Woods tracks and Marco V stuff. Marcel Woods Advanced, all the
2008 was such an amazing time for them.
Jochen Miller,
Nick
Chagall, all this stuff. It was amazing music, and I just, for some reason, my sound was very Dutch. I was heavily influenced by the Dutch guys, so it seemed the kind of the natural thing for me to send it to a Dutch label. So I sent it to Dick. He came straight back. He's like, "Yeah." He said, "Are there any samples?" And I was like, "Yeah." It's just a small one. So luckily we got in touch with John Murphy's publisher, and they gave us clearance for it. And it was a really big track for me. But the reason I made it was because Dick had actually gave me my first ever booking at Trance Energy in 2008 in Utrecht, which to this day it still gives me shivers when I think about it, because I was on the main stage with Tiesto, Marco V, Ferry, Sander, Kyle and Albert, and it's just an insane booking for me to get at that point in my career, and I still couldn't believe it. So I knew that I had this big show coming, and I knew that I had to make an intro track that just hopefully changed the atmosphere in the room and got everybody just with their hands up and just trying to give everybody goosebumps within the first few seconds of my intro. And it was amazing. It's that there's a really old video of it on YouTube as well. It's probably the oldest video that exists of me on YouTube, and it's an amazing. The audio quality is obviously absolutely
I love those.
Shit, but it's like
I sometimes when I see Alex Morph or when I see Cosmic Gate, I pull up the YouTube, and then there's this old interviews also from Trance Energy that I think Alex Morph is saying it's unbelievable, unbelievable. It's like it's a heavy German accent.
A very
he had like a beard with some gel in it, and speedy glasses with grey glasses. And
but a very quick funny story about Trance Energy. The main stage, I was up in the balcony watching all the DJs. I was the most nervous I've ever been in my life. It came to like 10 to 5 in the morning. It was time for me to go on. And it was a very high DJ box, and there was a very steep ladder. The only way you could get into the DJ box was a ladder. And I was climbing up the ladder, and halfway up, my knees started to tremble so much, I pretty much got stuck. And I was like, oh my God, I was trying to talk myself, into being normal again. And I eventually got to the top, and I was shaking, and Sander Van Doorn's manager, Jorn, remember Jorn?
Jorn
from
Heringa, yeah,
So
yeah.
Jorn was bending down, obviously, because Sander was on stage, and Jorn just saw my head come over the top of the ladder, and he's like, "Hey, Mark, are you okay?" And I was like, "No, just get me
I want to
up
go
here."
home.
So yeah, it was terrifying, but as you know, with these big shows, once you've been on a few minutes, the nerves just
When the
just flips into
first
adrenaline.
mix is done,
Yeah,
then you're fine.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the Polish show we were at, the Transmission show in Poland. It was incredible. Just that buzz you get before you go on stage, and they've got the big visuals and please welcome on stage Mark Sharon. You're just
Mark Sharon.
Open the hand.
Mark Sharon.
Is it Mark Sharinsky? I think my name is in Polish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Probably.
So it was a really good show, wasn't it?
That's amazing. Yeah. So, okay, maybe the radio show will be back. Maybe.
We'll see. Maybe.
Okay,
just
maybe.
50-50.
We'll stay with maybe.
Okay.
Another big step for you, 2014, making a big leap because, we only have limited time.
Yeah.
So 2013 was the launch of Outburst Recordings.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I just had all these ideas for releases, and I just wanted to be in control of what I was releasing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to try and... I generally had a real feeling of wanting to push new guys as well as taking in some of my friends, like obviously David Forbes, Malaka Lee did some releases in the Outburst label as well, but I just wanted to be somebody that I wanted to have an outlet for my own music that I was in control of, and an outlet for pushing guys, because I was talking to a lot of producers and I was getting sent demos and promos, and there was this whole load of new talent that I was discovering. Guys like Alex Di Stefano,
Yeah.
I messaged, he was one of the first guys that I messaged on Facebook, and he was like a techno guy at the time, and I thought, there's this thing about techno purists, I don't even know if we'll respond, but luckily Alex is an absolutely amazing guy, and he replied right away, and he's like, yeah, I can do a remix for you. So he remixed Live and Learn. That was the first release I did, and John O'Callaghan did a joint operations centre remix of Live and Learn as well, so that was the first release in 2014. But yeah, it's been going for 10 years now, and I'm very, very proud of it, and it's just the whole label is based upon tracks that are made for the dance floor. It's generally not a label that I'm trying to make money with. If it makes money, it's great, but it's purely for peak time madness, sweaty nightclubs, sweaty festivals,
and most of all the music that you play in your sets.
That's the key factor. If I get sent a demo and it's something that I'll play in a club, then it'll get signed. It's as simple as that. If it's something I can't play, then no, it's not getting signed.
Yeah, then it's because then your heart is not in it either.
Yep,
so
exactly.
I understand it 100%.
Yeah.
Before we get to the album, because that's the reason why you're here, there's a few things that I need to point out as well, because you've had a couple of amazing team ups and how do you say it? I would say bands maybe.
Okay.
SAS, of course, with Alan and Skinner of Public Domain.
Neil Skinner, yeah.
Yeah, and then also in 2012, Pseudonym with Forbesy.
Yeah. So I've actually forgot about that track again. Ferry signed that for Flashover.
Flashover. And that was Flashover Progressive.
Yeah.
So when I was looking through it, I was like,
yeah,
wait a minute.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense. How did you come up with that?
It was just one of these things. It just happened. I mean, it was like we got talking to Dave. Dave's been a friend, for a long, long time. But I thought, let's just get a jamming session. We haven't worked together for a while, and that was just something we come up with. But it was like we came up with this really kind of driving groove, and it was like it wasn't trance, it wasn't techno. Like, what is this? And we sent it to Ferry, and he was like, he came straight back. He said, yeah, definitely love this for the label. And he had just started Flashover Progressive.
Yeah.
I think it was maybe the first or second release.
Could be, yeah. And Ferry's always on the lookout for like random sounds, or he's always ahead of the pack with everything.
It definitely had a unique sound. There wasn't really anything else like it at the time. So that's one that I'd actually forgotten about.
And another thing that
you've been doing a lot of research.
I've been doing research, yes. I pride myself in that. Because, especially guys like you that has such a long career, there's so much stories and random tracks that you do in the meantime as well. Yeah. Another thing that you did with David Forbes, of course, is Thick as Thieves.
Yeah. We're having so much fun with that just now. That was actually a thing we started a few years ago, and
2017 was the first one.
Yeah,
and
thanks for telling me, because I couldn't have told you that. So that was it was definitely like a hard techno project, but it just shows you how things have changed so quickly. Because that was when we started that project. All the hard techno on the hard techno page the hard techno genre on Beatport, it was all like 128, 130 BPM. And that was what Thick as Thieves was.
Yeah.
So we did like about 5 or 6 tracks as Thick as Thieves under that kind of tempo, round about that kind of style. And then all of a sudden the hard techno chart just went woof, and the next thing it's like 150 BPM, and we're like, oh my God. So at this point, Ulrich from Insomniac at Dream State, he was talking to my manager. My manager manages me and David, and he said, right guys, we need something unique for
who's that person? Who's your manager?
Stuart Jackson.
Okay, yeah.
So Stuart had been talking to Ulrich, and he said, right guys, we want to get Mark and Davey to do Dream State together. Can they come up with a concept? And Stuart's like, well, the guys have already got a concept. It's Thick as Thieves. Yeah. So that was confirmed. But so obviously talking to Davey, I'm like, well, we can't really do 128 BPM, so we need to get some faster stuff done. So we made a few tracks and edits for the Dream State set. So now, but after we're talking about this earlier, one of the projects that I'm going to continue with once the kind of buzz of the album dies down is me and David, we're going to work a lot more in Thick as Thieves and try and really push it.
Yeah, because you did one a year. In 2017 you did Anytime, 2008 Eject the Sound, 2019 Collide, and 2020 was your last one. After that, you didn't have any anymore.
But there's one called Tingles on the album, so we've got a Thick as Thieves track.
There
on the
you go.
Yeah, so
and for the same reason, you started Gentech with Scott Project for Dream State as well, right?
So Gentech, that was the same. Ulrich, at that point, Bo from Luminosity was managing Frank Scott Project, and my old manager Bram from Holland as well was managing me. And Bram and Bo got contacted by Ulrich and the guys. I think it was Jeff actually from Insomniac. Said, right guys, we need some conceptual ideas for Dream State, teaming guys together. You know that they always like to put guys together to make something unique. So Bram got talking to Bo, and I've obviously worked and known Frank's a good friend of Crazy Frank. We've known each other a long, long time. So it just made perfect sense to kind of team us together. And that's how Gentech started. And I think it was 2018 was the first one we did as Gentech for Dream State in LA. So we're still it's on the back burner just now, just purely because of the album and because the Thick as Thieves thing's going really well with David. But Gentech's another thing I'm going to do more work with Frank as well, and just try and keep it going. It makes things exciting, you know. It's like it's more fun to be in the studio and working on a few different projects instead of just focusing on the same sound all the time. So Gentech's more like hard trance meets tech trance. The Thick as Thieves things like, you know, hyper techno, fast techno, hard techno. It's a bit kind of faster and harder. It just stops me from getting bored in the studio, just having all these different things.
Makes a lot of sense, to be honest.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the album because maybe it's fun to get some people involved as well. They're sitting in the studio right now.
Yeah. The team are here.
Let's start with the beginning of the album. So first, let's get Caroline here. Yeah. They are really dreading this moment, to be honest. We talked about it before, but I think it's just interesting to just chat about this with someone from the label as well.
Deep breaths, Caroline.
Maybe a short introduction about yourself.
Hi, I'm Caroline.
Hi.
Hi. There's a reason why I work behind the scenes and not in front of the scenes.
I think first of all, it's amazing that you're gonna do this, because I think this is the side of the story that people don't hear, and it's actually the most interesting one as well. 100%. So, Caroline.
Okay, so I'm Caroline. I work at Black Hole Recordings. I work in the A&R department, and I'm also a label manager for a lot of labels, and among them Mark Sherry's Outburst Records, Techford Records, and Outburst Twilight.
Yeah.
All of them?
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, and I love to work with Mark because he's extremely organized.
Yeah.
Not all artists are as organized as Mark.
How does it manifest that he's so organized?
I've got OCD.
No, he really does.
Yeah.
And to work with someone who has, I think you really do have OCD.
I do. My wife tells me all the time as well.
So super control freak.
Yeah. So for example, for the album, Mark made 30 tracks, and then from our end, I would prepare the contracts, for example, for all the. So there's a lot of collabs on there, but also some Mark Sherry tracks. And with Mark, you send him a contract, and I think the same day he would send it back. He would sign it. Maybe one or two questions, or that's it. Some artists, I would email a contract, won't hear back for a week, 2 weeks.
You have to remind.
Yeah. And then they would get, a lot of questions about the contract, and then I would email back, and then you don't hear anything from them. Mark is the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I've got this thing about having quite a small inbox. So if my inbox starts to go over, it's Gmail, so it goes over into the second page. I'm like, I don't like that. So I try and go through. I'm not like sitting up working all night, but I will spend a little bit of extra time at night to try and keep the inbox down as much as I can.
Yeah,
and that
I'm
really
the
helps.
same.
Yeah.
So it's great. I work with schedules and I tick everything off. There's never anything outstanding with Mark.
Yeah.
So it's always like green, tick, tick, tick. So I think that's why we work great together.
I think that's super fascinating because I know a lot of artists are very chaotic. That's true.
Yeah.
But for you, it's the opposite. So I'm very curious. So when you start working on the album, I guess who's initiating that? Are you like contacting me and it's time to do another album, or is it the other way around? You tell Caroline, I want to do another album. How does it work?
It was me this time, yeah, because it was me that kind of spoke to Arnie, just saying, look, Arnie, I'd really love to do something to kind of like celebrate my 30th anniversary, but I want to do something special. But I mean, Caroline is heavily involved with all the organisation of it, as she said. But I think Arnie's probably the guy that I was talking to more on the creative side.
He's the big boss.
Because I mean, basically I had to say, am I crazy? But I want to do 30 tracks, like a 30-track album. And I was expecting Arnie to say, that's too much, Mark, and then don't be crazy.
Caroline, you talk with Arnie and you're like, hey, Mark wants to do a 30-track album. And what do you say then?
So Arnie would involve me and be like, okay, so I had a great chat with Mark. He wants to do 30 tracks. And I'd be like, 30 tracks?
Are you nuts? Are you crazy?
Is he nuts?
Kick him off the
obviously
label.
we said no. And Arnie's like, no, we said yes. So I was like, okay. So then he involves myself and the rest of the crew. And we basically make a plan for the album.
And is the album already done by then, or is it starting?
No, it's starting.
It's starting.
It was starting. I mean, I think as I said to Ellie, like 2023, I had a really good run of releases, and at that point, I approached Arnie because I said, "Look, I've got like pretty much an album's worth of music here."
Yeah.
And then Mallorca passed away. Took a few months off to try and deal with things, and then back into studio 2024. I had another run of like. Probably the most creative session of like period of time I've ever had in my life was 2023 and 2024, and I just had all this music and I just felt I had all this energy, and I was like, Arnie, I think this could be like much bigger than a single album. Can we do a double album? So at that point I was thinking 10 tracks, 20 tracks, like 2 discs, 10 tracks per disc, and then it just became even bigger, and I got to the point I had 30 tracks, and I was like, can we do a triple album? And he's like, well, what are we talking? I was like, well, 30 tracks. And he's like, no, we can do 30 tracks. I'm happy for you to release 30 tracks, but let's do it over 2 discs. So 15 tracks per disc. Yeah. So that's where we kind of capped it off at that. And then obviously the Caroline starts getting involved, talking to the vocalists we're using. We worked with Sarah Hills. Like Arnie gave us the connection for Sarah Hills through Daniel Gardner, who operates a kind of vocal supplier, like a company kind of thing. And I met Adara at Dream State. Adara, Phoebe her name is. She's an incredible singer. I met her at Dream State. So again, I would see guys, I want to work with Adara. So Arnie and Caroline are sorting the contracts and stuff out with them.
I think Mark had a really clear idea and view of what he wanted. Also as a plan for the album, where some artists, they would have 50 tracks and just send everything over and be like, what do you guys think? And then we would like sort of pick out the good ones or what would fit best together. But with you or with this album, that wasn't the case, because you had a very clear idea of what you wanted, and so it was easy.
I mean, I think the guys were very clear in telling me, you've got to have some really like killer singles to get this launched. So focus on these just now. So
the tracks. So you get 30 tracks, or was it? Not finished yet, or still
quite early on. Maybe like after I had 10 tracks, and I would speak to the guys, and we had a collab called Angel with the Space Brothers, and we decided that should be the first single, because I've known the Space Brothers forever. They're amazing guys. They're some of my old trance heroes from back in the day, and so that Arnie said, look, let's make that the first thing. That would be a good first single. Yeah. So it was like kind of just an organic kind of thing, wasn't it? Just kind of discussing, right, that can be the first single. We'll release another single 3 weeks later. Let's go with this one. Then the guys would say, well, don't release 3 vocal tracks in a row. Release maybe 2 vocal tracks on Black Hole, and then you do a techie one on Outburst. Yeah. And then we'll go back to Black Hole for the vocal track. And then so it was a combination of releasing singles on Outburst and Black Hole. But the guys are amazing with, you know, working with the kind of more.
So it's a
stuff.
constant open conversation that you're having about the.
It was pretty much ongoing all the time.
With Mark, and then also sometimes without Mark, we would have like meetings in the office, and like with our marketing team and the people who are responsible for pitching, and we would discuss like, okay, which track do we think we should put out as the first single? Which one is going to be strong that we can pitch, that we can push, and put like big marketing budget on. But I think we sort of had the same idea about which tracks would be like singles, and so it's just easy.
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 Well,
easy. Yeah.
30 tracks, easy.
It's because you know I've had a lot of people here in the studio that everybody's like, should I do an album, yes or no? And then there's a lot of people that are saying no, or a lot of people saying yes because because they put so much time and effort, and then you release 30 tracks and maybe 10 get through the algorithm, or there's like only a few that people really like, and the rest is just disappearing. I would say.
Do you know? I can generally say Mallorca played a big part but in 2016, 2017, he always used to say to me, because Mallorca used to come down to the studio, we did music together, but we also did, like I would mix his albums, like mix and master. So he would come down to me with the stems, and I'd mix and master them in front of him and help him. But he was always like, Mark, come on, you need to do an album. He said, it's such an important personal thing. He said, I love, you know that I love your music. I think you should do something that it's like a slice through your life at that moment in time, and it's something great you can look back on, and it's like it becomes a legacy, and people will always remember where they were when they bought that album, or you'll remember what memories you had, what clubs you were playing in, what was going on in your life at that moment in time. So that kind of really resonated with me. So when it came to the point where I was like, I want to do a new album, and as I said to you earlier, like I wanted to do one like 2 or 3 years after Confirm Humanity, but because of COVID, it just made it impossible for me. So I knew that my next album, I just wanted to do something really special. And again, I felt like it had to be just a snapshot in time of what I was about musically at that time. Last year, obviously, my 30th anniversary. So I knew that I wanted to have the vocal uplifting stuff for the black hole kind of sound, but also have Outburst Tech Trance, also have my Dark Sherry alias with a hard techno,
150 BPM,
a little slice of Forbes in there. We've got a collab called Superposition that's on there. That's a kind of our usual trademark kind of tech trance sound, but I've also got the Thick as Thieves track Tingles on there as well. So I just wanted to try and combine all of this and make it flow from start to finish. And that was one of the things Arnie said as well. You know, when I sent him the track list, I said, "Does this work for you?" Arnie says, "That's perfect." He said, because I started off with the more vocally stuff, like disc 1 kind of starts to get tougher as it goes through, and then it kind of resets again, and then disc 2 is up a level and it starts to get faster and harder. So we get through the ultrasonic remixes from Mallorca. We've got the Dark Sherry stuff near the end as well. So just wanted it to feel like
so for
natural.
For you, the album is a story and it's a dot in the
It's
timeline.
a little snapshot. Take a little Kodak.
This is where I am right now.
Moment. This is me, 2024. This is what it was all about, kind of thing. Yeah.
And what would you advise to artists that are coming to you or saying the thing like, I don't want to do an album, or yes, I want to do an album? What is your position in that as well? Your personal, how do you say it, preference is doing an album, yes or no?
Oh, I think we always look at it from the office like we would always have a meeting about it and discuss, because a lot of artists approach us wanted to do an album. But we can't do albums from every artist, because for each artist we want to give them the best. You know, so I think we sort of approach it from that side. Are there tracks on there that we can like really push and that can be big singles? Is the album overall gonna do well, or is it just not there yet? Because then we would rather wait, maybe even a few years until it's at that level. So I think from our end we would always approach it that way. Like, can we get the best out of it, and can we market it?
So you would have like a listening session. You would listen to the music of the artist, and then you would decide and advise maybe to artists to do yes or no to do an album or not.
Correct.
Okay.
I think as well,
That's
like there's a lot of guys that are so they've got their sound and they stick to it for every single release, and that's fine if you want to do that. But see, if somebody comes along and says, "Why don't you do an album?" When somebody suggests that and you take on the project of an album, you discover that you're so capable of doing other different styles that so it takes that little kind of trigger moment. You're like, hold on a minute, I could actually do progressive, or I could do ambient, or I could do vocal uplifting or something like that, you know. So it's an album project really pushes you outside your comfort zone, and I think it really squeezees the best out of some artists.
You challenge yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't, when that's presented to you, it makes you really push yourself a lot more, a lot harder.
But being a devil's advocate right now, the music that you don't really normally do, maybe your fans wouldn't understand it, and maybe you would only get like a few listens on Spotify or whatever. Do you still think it's worth your time to work on that?
I do, because I think if you've got like your diehard followers and fans, I think they'll kind of roll with what you're doing. I think they'll appreciate the fact you're trying to do different stuff. They'll maybe appreciate the fact that you're trying to do something different for them. It's not just for me; it's for other people as well to listen to. Okay. So I think they respect that. I've kind of found that, especially with Confirm Humanity, because it was, I mean, the 30 album is very kind of more fast paced. I think the slowest track is like 110 BPM, but that's right at the end. Everything's about 138 up to like 150, so it's a kind of quite a high tempoed album. Whereas Confirm Humanity started at 128 BPM and went up to like maybe 144 or something. Yeah. So but I think it's great to just spread your wings and see what you're capable of.
As long as you just tell your story. This is my opinion. Yeah. As long as the artists stay really close to themselves and like, this is what I'm feeling right now. This is the kind of direction I want to go into. We've also had artists that think like, oh, this type of genre is getting really hot now. I want to go there. Like, don't do that. Yeah. Don't go after the hype. Stay true to yourself.
Because it has to be your project.
It has to be your project. It has to like when you listen to Mark's album, you have to like feel it. Instead of like thinking what could be successful. That doesn't work. But I think with, not even in the music business, with if you want to create any product in the world and you think like, oh, I want to create this just to get rich or successful, it doesn't work like that. And I think that's exactly the same with music and artists. Just stay close to yourself and what you want to make.
That's amazing. That's so true. So we get to the marketing part with Jordi just a little bit, but first I want to know, creatively, what's the next step for you for this album? Like, what's going to happen next? Because now it's out. Remixes, or is there going to be what's going to happen? Arnie,
he's always keen to get remixes involved. So I think, the next thing we've actually just scheduled is the vinyl release. So I'm really excited about that. So Arnie said, do you want to release the whole album as it sits on the CD, so the kind of shorter edits? And I was like, no, we need to do, I'm a vinyl head. I know that all the guys that buy vinyl will want extended mixes, so let's just stick to extended mixes. So we'll do 8 tracks, two discs. We'll do volume 1. So that, I think Arnie I think he scheduled that last week. He put it into production last week. Yeah. So he said, I think the guy said it takes like 8 to 10 weeks to get vinyl produced these days, which is, it's quite slow, but that's just the way it is.
That's not so bad, to be honest.
Yeah. So hopefully the vinyl is going to be like coming up in the next couple of months, and then we're going to do volume 2 because there's 30 tracks to choose from. So we're only going to use 8 on the first one. So we're going to
kill your darlings.
Exactly, another 8 on volume 2. Yeah, and who knows? There might, if they both go well, there might be a volume 3. There's maybe enough tracks to do that. But that's the next thing, and then Arno
some remixes.
Get some remixes. Yeah.
Do you already have people in mind that you would like to?
Well, I wanted to ask the same to Mark because he can obviously say what artist he would prefer to have remixes from, and then because we're quite a big record label, we always have a lot of artists and bigger artists, smaller artists approaching us like, oh, can we do any remixes? So we have lists of people that we can go through then and approach, and they would be super excited. So, but we need to make a plan for that.
I'll make a plan right now.
Obviously, still within the realms of like, I want the remixes to be tracks that I can play in my sets as well.
Of course, yeah. But I can understand that from a label point of view, if you take one of the big songs, let's just strip away the beats, you have a big song, and then you can get someone on there and then create something that's totally different.
Yeah. Get some progressive mixes done.
Exactly. Yeah. So I can understand from a label point of view that you would bring in some name that normally wouldn't be in the in your mind.
Yeah. Sometimes artists approach us like bigger artists and they'd be like, oh, listen to Mark's album, I'm crazy about this song. And even though it's a totally different genre, they'd be like, I think I can do something like really cool with this. And be like, well, go for it.
Yeah.
And then,
So if there's anyone listening right now, you can send an email to Caroline.
Will Atkinson just told me last night he loves one of the tracks on there, so he might be in the running, or maybe.
Well, he's got my email address.
Yeah. Well, come on, if you're listening.
Yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for your insights. Yeah. All right, let's get to another step, because it doesn't happen a lot that the artist comes in with a decent crew, I would say. So Caroline comes in with the A&R part, A&R department part. The next person that I wanted to check really quickly with is Jordi, because putting out an album is for a label is quite a dedication, because releasing singles could be like, okay, this sounds a bit weird, but you just put it on SoundCloud and let's see what happens, or Spotify, or whatever. For a label, you need to put a lot of time, and time is money. So you invest a lot of time and money into releasing an album like 30. Normally there wouldn't be a lot of marketing involved, but for an album project, that's something else. So maybe you could introduce yourself a little bit, Jordi.
Hello, I'm Jordi, and I work for 5 years for Black Hole Recordings. I do the marketing. Caroline and I normally are not used to doing talk shows, etc.
Yeah, so it's amazing that you guys are doing it, because I'm learning stuff as well. So it's amazing to see that you guys are here in the studio. So thank you for that. So all right, the album is done. The A&R department has done their thing. And now the album is done, and what happens next? It comes into your email box, and it's like, hey, here's an album, do your magic.
Yeah, exactly. For me, I can never have enough lead time. So that is, I think, the biggest challenge of doing an album.
Yeah.
But quite early, when I know that an artist is doing an album, so for example, when I knew that Mark is going to do his 30 album, I just contact him, sent him a nice submission form, with a lot of questions. So I have a lot of body to work with, more the background. Because
what kind of questions do you put in there?
A lot of personal questions, because I do a lot of the pitching as well to all the editorial teams.
Yeah.
And I just think the more personal you make it, because music stays music, but if you put some storytelling, etc. to it, it makes it so much special, also for listeners, but also for the editorial teams.
Makes it more personal.
Yeah, exactly, because especially nowadays with streaming, people consume music so fastly, and an artist has a big background, a great story of a track of an album, you know, and I see album more as a concept, so it has a beginning like and an end.
Brand, so you have to create a brand or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like an album for me is a concept, beginning and an end, and it's a fun way to promote music and promote an artist.
So you're saying something, a lead time. So does that mean you're already starting on a project while it's not even finished yet, or does it start when the album is being delivered to you, packaging, artwork, everything's done, it comes on your plate, and then you start scheduling it? Or how do I have to see the time frame in your position?
In an ideal world, I would work with, I get the full package and then I start working with the marketing and the planning. But normally,
that doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that.
But you have an OCD guy like Mark, so maybe it's a little bit different.
Yeah, that helps, but he still needed to make 30 tracks. So
So how long? So the album got released the end of February. When was the first time that you received a full package that you were like, okay, now I can paint a picture that I want to present to the world?
The deadline was, I think it was the 7th of January or some 10th of January.
Something like that. We started talking after ADA or something like that. In November-ish, I think. Yeah,
the original deadline was like December. And I was very close to getting the deadline, but then I get hit with a massive, like really, really bad flu. And I messaged Darnie, said, Darnie, it's not going to happen. It's close, but I was wiped out for like 2 or 3 weeks. It was a really, really bad flu. And then, so we made the new deadline, and I think it was maybe the 10th of January, and we managed to make the deadline. So it's just a good buzz for me because I'm relaxed now.
I'm just trying to paint a picture here. So you're saying you were talking about it already at Amsterdam Dance Event. From a marketing point of view, do you already start in your head, okay, there's a dot on the horizon, we have to release in February, but there's already a concept, 30 is going to happen. Maybe you already had some ideas on the artwork, or how does it work in the mind of a marketeer that you're like, okay, it's already there. It's not finished yet, but I can already maybe start scribbling down ideas, or how does it work?
Yeah, exactly. We always try to talk with the artists to see what can we do, what fits them, because we're not want to force artists to do things that they don't want to do. Like, for example, some artists don't want to participate in the TikTok trend.
Okay, yeah.
So I just have a chat with Mark and see what we can do. So we did like a broadcast, like a video stream in Glasgow, right?
Okay.
So Jordy basically came to me and said, here are some ideas. Have you got some ideas? And I was like, yeah, well, why don't we do like a kind of live stream setup? Not actually live, but having a videographer in with different camera angles. Invited some close friends and family in a small room in Glasgow. It was a small studio. It's actually above David Forbes' studio. It's a radio station called Groove City Radio. So Michelle, that I'm really friendly with, she actually works for Colours. You've probably met Michelle before.
Yeah. She's amazing.
Yeah. Michelle's amazing. She's one of the funniest people I know. So she said, yeah, just set it up in my studio and here's the email for a videographer. We'll get him in, get your friends in, 20 people at the most. So yeah, we did this just pretty much like today, just playing like an hour's worth of music with my close friends and family. So we did that. That's going to go on YouTube soon. Obviously doing this today. We're going to try and do like a documentary as well. So maybe me like sitting in the studio answering questions that we can maybe post online, get people to send us like questions about the album. And I'm going to go around some of the clubs in Ayr that I've got a lot of history with, and my friend's a videographer and he's going to come out and record me just walking around talking about the historics of where I first started. Hangar 13, the club I was telling you about, and other clubs in Ayrshire where I live, and then we'll kind of flick between me sitting in the studio answering questions and then out and about walking around clubs and stuff, just trying to make a little documentary. So there's all, I mean, you guys come up with some really like great ideas, stuff that I wouldn't have normally thought of.
Do you work with like a template that you have like, okay, I want to have this content, or is it tailor-made for every single album?
Yeah, tailor-made. I don't like working doing template work, you know, because I think that can kill the creativity a little bit. So I just want to always check what the artist likes. So that is why I do the introduction form and then start working on a concept that works for the both of us.
Yeah.
Obviously. Yeah.
That must be so, you have a cool job.
Yeah, I'm super.
Right.
Yeah.
That you can that you can spar with like the artists and see what they want to do and come up with these amazing ideas.
Yeah,
I think to create cool content. That's super cool.
Yeah.
I
think it helped the fact that the album is all about my historical stuff. So there's quite a lot to talk about. There's different aspects of everything that I've done in the 30 years. It's good to kind of tick a few boxes talking about it all.
I can imagine that, for example, when you first started at Black Hole Recordings, that's 5 years ago, so much trends have changed already, right? Or a different, like, how do you want to promote an album? It must be already different than last year even.
Yeah, totally.
What is the most important thing right now?
Yeah, it's like, obviously when I started after my internship, I still needed to learn a lot of things, so I grew a little bit into doing the album campaigns, doing the pitching, etc. What started, obviously, when I started, it was like 2018, 19, I started. Obviously, we had COVID, which was a super strange time to release music. Because what we saw is that, for example, Spotify, Apple Music, like the streams were climbing, and we did a lot of video sets, which was a great tool to create awareness for the artist.
Yeah, because you still had something, you needed something to promote the music that you were doing.
Yeah, it's like, I think nowadays we live in a era of awareness. So that is, I think, the most important thing for artists, to create awareness, to stay ahead of the competition. And during COVID, staying relevant during COVID, the video sets were a great tool to create awareness. And some artists did it on Twitch, some artists did it on YouTube, so it was nice to see that artists were developing a new strategy during that time.
Yeah, you had, of course, Cosmic Gate from your stable that did fantastic YouTube streams, of course. I always love the vibe of Cosmic Gate. Klaus like, hey, come on. That's how it works.
It was fun work with them. And even Mark, like, I grew up listening to trance, and I was lucky enough to did my internship at Black Hole Recordings and could stay work there. But it's always so much fun to work with artists like Mark, because I grew up listening with him, started raving, etc. It's fun, it makes it super fun to.
And how do you deal with the fact that there's artists, Caroline just mentioned it as well, some of them are organized and some aren't, which must be a pain in the ass for you as well, because if you have artists that don't reply to an email for a week, that must make it a little bit harder for you, right?
Yeah, that is the thing. Like when I do pitching, I obviously need to do things far in ahead, and sometimes an artwork isn't finished, or even the master isn't finished, so that makes my life a little bit more difficult, you know. And we obviously do a lot of different artists, so sometimes it's like a lot of planning, you know, and finding out what's the best solution for all those projects.
So out of the project of 30 of this album, what is you would say the key thing that you can use to promote this album? What is like the first thing that pops up straight away in your mind? Okay, this is the pitch, or this is the best thing to do with this album.
Yeah, the most important thing is Mark is a personality. You know, he can talk really well, and he has a.
But you can't understand me, can you?
I don't know what he said, but go on.
No, but he can talk really. He has a good story, you know. And like we're saying, with his background, which is super unique, like 30 years in the industry, but you did everything, you know. Releasing with majors, you know, having big success. Obviously, you talked about it during the podcast.
Yeah.
But that is so valuable to create like concepts out of, you know, like we're going to do the documentary. That will be a nice instrument to use in the marketing campaign.
Yeah, I love that. So it's definitely like not a best of, but best so far.
Yeah.
Right? I guess that could be the pitch. Yeah. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for thank you for that. So now the album is released, so that's your time to shine. What is the next step? How are you going to make sure that this album is going to echo for quite a while? Because we said it earlier, in the album project, it's the hardest part. The release, it's always like peak, bam. A lot of things are coming. And then the marketing team comes in and it's like, okay, how are we going to get the most reach and make sure that it stays here for a while?
Yeah, we still have over 20 tracks that we need to release, right?
I was going to say that. I mean, Arnie was like, you know, the new guys as well, we've been careful to make sure that even now that the album's released, there's still more singles to come from the album.
So that helps a lot.
So we've kept some of the, well, in my opinion, like I'm not trying to big myself up here, but there's one of the tracks that I love in the album. It's called Heroes, and it's with Sarah Howells.
Yeah.
I absolutely love Sarah Howells' vocals. She's absolutely incredible, and that's going to be one of the next singles to come. And We've not played it down, but we've kind of just hit. I've not posted any previews online, just holding it back. So when it comes out, for people that maybe even haven't heard the album, they're going to be like, "Oh, what's this track?" You know. So we're you're trying to tease enough of the album, but not give it all away too soon, because then that way the buzz will just die. So we're trying to make sure, like, there's a track coming up that I've done with David Forbes. That's coming up. That's going to be the next one after the album. We've got the Heroes track with Sarah Howells. There's a few more singles to come. So that'll hopefully sustain the kind of longevity of the album as well. So it's not like just a big bang and then it's done. It's away. Move on to the next project. So I think that's the guys have done a good job of spacing that.
Do you also have a saying in that, or no? Is that pure a creative decision, or are you like, okay, we need to have enough ammo to keep it going?
Yeah, it depends.
Like a team decision.
Yeah, it's mostly a team decision, but with some artists, it really depends on the project. Like, we're lucky that Mark made like over 30 tracks, which makes everything more easy. Some artists do like an extensive waterfall strategy before and then release the album, and then basically it's somewhat done. Yeah, you know, nowadays you see a lot like waterfall strategy, album, and done, on to the next, you know. But with Mark, we're flexible, and basically we release the album now, but now we just started because we still have vinyl that we're going to do. So there are a lot of different instruments that we can use to keep the momentum going.
Yeah. What is your preference? Do it before or after? Or is there no right and wrong?
There is not really a right or wrong, but obviously when you release it on the DSPs, an album, you can't release the singles afterwards, you know, so you need to make like different versions out of it. But I'm more a fan of artists having a project and really sticking with it for a year or so, you know. So
tour with it and
and also giving it some love, you know, because we live a little bit in a day and age of producing a lot of content, you know. And sometimes you forget to really think about the story of a release and really to create momentum for it.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's quite unique with our kind of working relationship as well is obviously like my label Outburst is distributed by Black Hole, so we can share the load of the album releases. So Black Hole's always had its own sound that's more trance than Outburst. Outburst is a kind of techier label, so we can still sustain the album releases over the next few months after the albums came out. You know, there's going to be releases on Outburst. Yeah. I'm going to release a Dark Sherry EP on Techburst, so I can take the harder stuff from my labels and you guys can roll with the more slightly, not commercial, but the more vocally releases, because you guys
can get
really,
the most out of everything.
We're totally maximising everything right across the board, across Outburst and Black Hole and Techburst as well.
So it won't eat up the release schedule of Black Hole.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's smart. Yeah. So what is the last thing for you, Jordi? What is the piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring artist that is coming up right now? What is the piece of advice to get yourself in the spotlight? On socials or whatever, what's the marketing tip you could give?
Yeah, maybe very cheesy, but be unique. You know, try to find your niche, try to find your thing, because we see a lot of artists nowadays going viral.
Yeah.
Because they find a small thing, like maybe remixing 80 songs or 80 songs, making like dance versions out of it and go viral on Instagram. You know, it's just finding your niche and doing what you love. And like Caro was chasing, not always chasing trends, you know, because you want to not be a follower, you know, you want to set goals and challenges for other people.
So create your own identity and stick with it. Sort of.
Yeah, exactly. Do what you love.
Or find your spot in the spectrum and do what you do.
Yeah, just find something that works for you and works for the algorithms on social media, especially because nowadays that's kind of important, especially for new people. Mm-hmm. You know, back in the days it was obviously different. But yeah, do something that you really love. Be unique. Find a niche. Find something that works, and not really chasing the trends. In my opinion,
perfect advice. Thank you so much, Jordi, for your insights. Yeah, for sure. Okay, I have a few more questions for you, Mark, and then we can wrap it up, because I think there's a lot of nice information already in here.
You're off the hook, guys. It's all right. You're off the hook.
Yeah, you're off the hook. You did it. No more worries.
No more stress.
Because there's a few more things that I want to address, because it's, you know, we're talking about it already a little bit. This is a celebration for you that you're 30 years in the business. What would you say is the biggest difference between back in the days when you had your first bam and how everything's going right now? If you take like a helicopter view, what is the biggest difference in time?
The biggest difference I've noticed is how fast things move these days. You know, it's like, as I was saying earlier, like when I started the Thick as Thieves project with Davey, it was like everything was like 128 BPM as far as hard techno goes, and then all of a sudden it's just woof, and it's like it was in. You could literally watch it in the matter of months, you know. And it's just there seems to be there's a big wave of popularity of one style, and then it kind of like fades out, and then another one will come in really quickly, and you know, look at like Psytrance come in like wow, and then it's like it kind of fades away, and then something else. But these waves just seem to be happening faster and faster.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I mean it keeps things fresh. But yeah, it's for me, I think because I'm an older, slightly more mature, older guy in the scene, it's maybe it kind of freaks me out sometimes. Like, you know, what's going to come next? You know, when's it going to?
Does it stress you out?
I wouldn't say stresses me out too much, but yeah, it's just like it keeps you on your toes, because every time I go in the studio now, I'm like, what the hell am I going to do today? Like what tempo, what style? You know, but I generally do love getting in the studio. But when you start a new track, that kind of probably freaks me out a bit more than it used to, because I'm thinking, what's going to be my jam today?
Yeah.
You know, what style should I go for? Should it be a standard tech trance track, or will I go for a Dark Sherry track at 150 BPM, or will I do something a bit more trancey? It's just trying to pick that goal.
Do you have trends in the back of your mind then, or maybe even if you don't think about it?
I think, I mean, it always really kind of happens in those first few hours when you start a new track. You kind of if you find a groove, I find it's better just to roll with it.
Yeah.
There was a time where I'd maybe start something and it would go in a completely different direction, and stupidly I would hit the brakes and come back and go back in the direction that I wanted to go in, and it might not end up as good. Yeah. Now if I get a groove and it works and I'm rolling with it, I'll just go with it. So that's kind of changed quite a lot for me, because I think it helps you get to the finish line a lot faster, just to go with the flow. try not to think too much about, I don't want to go down that road, but maybe you should, you know. So that's a different kind of aspect of things nowadays. Whereas I didn't really used to think about that too much.
Just in the past, you go with the flow, and that's what it is.
But I mean, it's an amazing time for music. There's just so many different styles. You know, there's this kind of hyper techno. There's the kind of fast hard techno. There's acid techno. It's like it's exciting.
I think that's
really
also your point of view, and that's probably why you have a career of 30 years. Is that you embrace the world around you and then see what's actually happening.
You have to. I mean, if there's any producers listening to this, I just really recommend that you just try everything. Trance has been guilty for so many years of just being this one style, one tempo, using the same kick drum all the time. Just think outside the box. Try everything and anything you can think of. Just do something, because you're not going to make a name for yourself if you don't try something different.
Yeah.
Look at all these guys in the past that have come out of nowhere, like Sander Van Doorn. His sound was so different to anybody else's at that time. Yeah. And all these guys that would come along, and it just takes that little bit of extra time in the studio to hone your own sound and be unique. That's how you get noticed, and that's something that, as I said, the trance scene's a bit kind of guilty of that, because everybody's so caught up in the past. I love uplifting trance and all the old 90s stuff as much as everybody else, but there comes a point where you just have to move. Still love it, still make it, but do other styles as well. You don't have to be this guy that's got the blinkers on and,
100%.
Yeah.
And that's probably why you can celebrate a 30 years career, because when you think about it, just in your mind, think about it. If you go back 10 years, all of the artists around you were different than right now or 20 years ago, because it goes so fast.
Yeah.
People don't realize that most of the careers of an artist are maybe 2 or 3 years, and then they're gone already. And here you are after 30 years.
Yeah. You've got to move with the times. You've got to stay fresh. You've got to try and think ahead. You've got to look and see what other styles are working, and not be like a guy who follows genres all the time and follows trends. You don't need to follow trends. You don't need to. I mean, I don't want to mention names, but there's guys that I know that as soon as a new genre comes out, they jump on that genre and they do lots of tracks, and then another genre comes out and they jump on that, and they just jump around all over the place, but they don't seem to be doing that well, but it's just good to spread your wings and try different styles and have several strings to your bow, to be successful.
Yeah.
And it's good for promoters as well, because promoters can look at you as an artist that they could potentially put on early in the night or peak time, or somebody that can close the stage, so the more styles that you have under your belt, it makes you more appealing as an artist for promoters to book.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for all the insights.
Thanks, Ruben.
And congratulations once again. The album 30, it's out now on Black Hole Recordings. If you haven't listened to it already, take 3 hours, because it takes a lot of time to go through 30 tracks.
Go for a long drive.
Go for a long drive on vacation or whatever, listen to it. Thank you once again, Mark Scherrer.
Thanks a lot, Ruben.
And thank you also to Jordi and Caroline for joining us today, guys, for the podcast. And thank you for tuning in. And if you're still listening to this at all the ends, we're 1.5 hours in. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in. Check all previous episodes on YouTube or your favorite podcast portal.